Right, big guest on the programme today. He was one of the biggest bands of the 1980s. They were ABC, and with lead singer Martin Fry, originally from Stretford, on lead vocals, the band had some of the biggest anthems of the decade. Well, their debut album, Lexicon of Love, was a hit all over the world, and now 40 years on, they're releasing Lexicon of Love live in Sheffield. That's going to be released in the next couple of days. Well, I caught up with Martin recently to talk about 40 years since the release of that life-changing album, and did he think that when he was recording the album, it would be the perfect album?
It's amazing, all these years on, over 40 years later, people still love the Lexicon of Love and all those songs, like Look of Love. Boys and Arrows on there. I remember saying to Trevor Horn when we finished mixing the last track, we need some more material on this. You know, it was almost like I was going to chase it down as it went off in the van to the cutting plant, you know. We kind of thought we'd stumbled across something. It was a kind of piece of music that we wanted to hear, you know, kind of combination of a lot of influences. A bit of post-punk in there and a bit of Bowie alongside, you know, the Sinatra and the strings and Motown. There was a lot of things going on.
Because it is, isn't it? It's a great eclectic mix of tracks. Was there one in particular where maybe the album went in a different direction, or a track that you thought, OK, I think we've nailed this now?
It was a case of going to each track and trying to make it as complete as possible. So with something like All of My Heart, I remember Trevor Horn saying, you know, to make a really cool album, you need a couple of slightly slower tracks, guys, you know, because all our stuff pumping away. So I remember going back to the hotel and kind of writing with Mark White, All of My Heart. So it's kind of a bit of a ballad. It tells a story, so you have to kind of play it a different way.
Now that you're gone, I still want you back. Remembering that thought, all of my heart.
No, I think every track, we had a track called Valentine's Day. Yeah, it started off as a sort of bit of a Brit funk track, and it kind of developed from there.
When the postman don't call on Valentine's Day, and Santa Claus don't on a rainy day, don't ask me, I already know.
But we wanted every song to sound like a sort of mini opera, and for not really to be much of a fade out. It kind of went an emotional peak, you know. It kind of, so Poison Arrow is like a little story, really, I suppose. And in a way, I think that's why that, and the fact that most people have had a broken heart, is kind of why the record's durable and kind of around today.
And I suppose this was ABC's introduction to the music world, and because it is such a great album, loads of great tracks on there. Was there a lot of debate as to the first track that you were going to release, which of course was Tears Are Not Enough?
Tears are not enough.
No, we'd already recorded Tears Not Enough. Tears Not Enough and a song called Alphabets A to Z, I think, of ABC. I forgot the name of it. They were our two songs, and we went down to Polygram Studios with Steve Brown, a guy that Phonogram suggested, and we knew it was our one shot to make it had to be great. Otherwise we were back on West Street signing on the Dole in Sheffield. So we put everything into that, and that record got to number 19. And then shortly afterwards we met Trevor Horn, and he produced the rest of the album. Yeah, that's what happened there.
It's interesting now, isn't it? Because obviously you can go on the internet and search anything, but when you came up with the name ABC, did you all sort of think, God, somebody else must have come up with this one? It's such a great, you know, sort of a group name.
Oh yeah, there was the Aerated Bread Company, there was ABC Taxes. I think what we were trying to do is be a bit corporate back then, a bit quaint really, back in 1981, I suppose, when we were ABC, the Radical Dance Faction, but that kind of was too long, so it kind of chipped back to ABC. Inspired, I think, mainly by the Jackson 5 song. But it's a terrible name. You Google ABC today, you just end up, you know,
you can't find anything.
It's a terrible, terrible name. For years, I used to say we used to have to work really hard to make it mean something. The 3 letters and the 3 stars there in capital letters, musically, because it doesn't really tell you what kind of music it's about. But now, no, it's hopeless. It's a hopeless name. Yeah, so I have to work extra hard to make people remember that it's a band. Yeah.
I think if you're around in that era, there is always something very special about vinyl. I've started to collect vinyl again because I love vinyl.
Yeah.
And so I got into a lot of shops, and it's funny how there are certain album covers that were so iconic in that era
Yeah.
Instantly, when you see even just the very top of it, you know which album it is. Funny enough, I don't see yours very often. I don't know why that is, but Lexicon of
They've
Love...
all been bought.
Yeah,
They've all been
probably.
bought.
But that album cover is kind of like iconic, isn't it now? Did you think that at the time when you were doing that photo shoot?
Well, growing up in the 70s, I used to knock around in Sheffield. I used to go to Rare and Racy. People wouldn't understand this now, but I just used to wander around record stores, looking at sleeves, reading them, listening to whatever they were playing in the shop. And that's really the basis of my... Because I couldn't afford to buy many records, you know. So that's the basis of your knowledge of the sort of music of the times, you know. It's like, oh, who's this? David Bowie. This looks good, you know. When it came... And I love Roxy Music, you know. Roxy Music sleeves were fantastic. They were art. So when it came to doing the album sleeve for The Lexicon of Love, yeah, we wanted to tell a story. We'd already spent a fortune doing the sleeves on the 7-inch for Tears Not Enough and then Poison Arrow and then Look at Love. The record company had one of us. They said, why have you got to have such elaborate sleeves on your little 7-inch records? You know, we had artwork on the back and a story on the back and all this. And then we spend a lot of time mixing stuff. You know, the whole idea of doing a 12-inch mix was developing at that time. So it wasn't just one song on the radio, you know, it was a whole kind of industry. With the sleeve, with the Lexicon of Love, it's a bit Bond-esque, I think. Yeah, it's a theatre production, yes. And I'm up on stage protecting a lady in a red dress, I think it is.
Yeah, did you have to stand there long? You got particularly strong muscles at the time? No.
You know what, I didn't have a suit, so I kind of went to John Collier and rented a suit, I think. The suit had to be back at 4 o'clock.
Who remembers John Collier? Didn't the advert used to go, John Collier, the window to watch? Anyway, Martin Fry from ABC, and that album, incidentally, The Lexicon of Love, live in Sheffield, is now available. More from Martin on the way. Right, we're talking to Martin Fry, originally from Stretford, of course. He has been on lead vocals for ABC, the band, for the last 40 years. The band's had some of the biggest anthems of the decade. Their debut album, Lexicon of Love, was released 40 years ago. And to mark that, they've just released Lexicon of Love live in Sheffield. Well, I spoke to Martin about the fact that he grew up in Manchester. And, of course, the 80s and the 90s music was massive here. So where did he get his inspiration from?
I used to go to the Hacienda. It opened in 1982, so it developed into its kind of rave hacienda around about 87, 88. And I'm really good mates with Mike Pickering, who was DJing at the house. And he was also the A&R man at Factory for years. And by that, you know, you'd go round to his house and there'd be like lads just sat in the corner. You know, he was listening to a cassette or something. That would be the Happy Mondays, I suppose. And, you know, music was everywhere. Yeah, it was great.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's no longer there. If you just mention the word now, hacienda, people just say, well, what was it like? What was it actually like? It's difficult to put into words, isn't it?
Hacienda was the first time you ever saw any of that sort of minimal architecture. I think the way it was designed, it was built, purpose-built. It was incredibly ambitious from everybody at Factory. You know, New Order should be applauded for what they did for, you know, Manchester culture. Obviously, they have been applauded. But you'd never seen anything like it. And then to develop, it was a club where you got all ages, you know, there was a kind of gay guys, straight guys, R&B guys, metal guys, rock guys, indie guys. As everybody knew, you know, it was such a great sort of melting pot of all types of different people. And I think that's what made it such a fabulous place. Yeah, it was great. It saddens me to think, although maybe now I should have bought an apartment there, you know, as an old fella. That'd be strange.
And of course, the thing is, you know, the whole era that we're talking about is being kept alive in so many different ways. I'm addicted to Top of the Pops on BBC4 at the moment. I mean, that must just bring back so many great memories for you. You know, the people that you were performing alongside at that time. I
mean, I remember walking down a corridor and you see like Mick Jagger or David Bowie, you know, walking in the opposite direction. But what's incredible about Top of the Pops too is it's expanded our audience today. You know, if I play a show, I kind of say to them, you're Top of the Pops too. You're too young to have been there on Thursday nights back in the 80s. I mean, with Spotify, with every radio station, people go back and study different eras of music, don't they, in a way that's we never did before.
So I've just been listening to the Lexicon of Love Live, which is coming out. This was recorded in Sheffield. Your voice hasn't changed, has it?
I can still hit pretty much most of the high notes. Yeah, I do enjoy singing. And they say that while you can sing, you should. And then, you know, your voice may change as you get older. There's one song I changed the key on, which was Tears Not Enough, our first ever song. Yeah, it was originally in E. And I remember standing on a chair to try and sing it back in 1981, you know. So it's in, I think it's in D now. Yeah, it came down a little notch.
The precision and the clarity on the album's beautiful, isn't it?
I should say this though, yeah, we didn't want to record 12 nights and then edit them together. The recording is warts and all. Yeah, it's that night in all its glory. So there are a couple of fluffs, but you know, it's authentic. There wasn't a chance to, there wasn't a desire to overdub it, you know what I mean, and make it. It was a great show. It was a magical night. So, and you know, the orchestra, they hit the note. They always hit the notes right. So it's all good, yeah.
And it's funny how these anniversaries come along, isn't it? I remember when you re-released Lexicon of Love, was that 20th anniversary?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny how they just come
40
along.
years now.
Yes, how it's so quickly, isn't it? You know, these anniversaries come along.
Time's arrow, isn't it? It's moving along, yeah.
Life's good then at the moment.
Yeah, life is good. It's great playing festivals, and it's been nice to kind of showcase what we do with the full orchestra as a legacy. You know, originally we did a lot of songs. People thought there was a lot of orchestration on those records, but we couldn't afford much. So it's nice now to bring those songs out, in all their glory.
Well, somebody's going to have to come up with an absolute belter of an album for me to change my mind in terms of my favourite ever album. I don't think it's going to be Beating, because it is such a classic album.
That's very kind of you.
And make sure that you check out the Lexicon of Love live recorded in Sheffield, which is for the 40th anniversary. It's a great album. And Martin, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.